So guys, I'm always battling ants in the garden. It's even in potted things like this potted strawberry. Ants find their way to it and they just attack and bite into the strawberries and eat half of them. So it's really frustrating. So they're always in my vegetables into something. So this little trap is so simple. It uses a naturally occurring mineral. It's perfectly safe. It doesn't have any super toxic substances. And so it's easy to put together. You can make these in less than 10 minutes and just put them out throughout your garden wherever you're having a problem with ants, and it works every time. So the first thing you're going to need is a plastic container with a screw-on lid, and they come in lots of different types and whatever, but this is just a leftover ice cream container, an overpriced one at that, but it's really good. But you're going to need, secondly, some type of cap. This came from a salad dressing bottle. So that's the two components you need. Now the reason you want something with a screw-on lid is so you can seal off any possible rainwater, and you're going to turn it on its side. What you're going to do is you're going to put holes in it. Now I've recommended this many times on the channel. Basically it's a soldering tool, but it works really great. It's wireless and it heats up really quickly. You're going to put holes on the one side of the trap, the sugar trap we're making, and you're going to put it on the high side because you're going to want to keep water from getting inside here and contaminating your trap. So let's see if it's heated up enough. Now these work great. We're going to put about 3 or 4 holes on the high side of this, so as it's sitting on the ground, the entry holes to the ant trap is going to be towards the top. Now, one reason you're going to want to use small holes like this is you want to keep other insects from getting in there. You only want to target ants with this, so if you don't want roaches and other things in there, that's why you're using the really small openings. So only ants will be getting in. There may be some other insects that find their way in, but it's going to be something really small. And roaches, wherever you have sugar or any food products, roaches will find their way into it. So that's really important that you make sure the holes to your trap are very small. So the attractant portion of this trap is going to be either granular white sugar or honey. I prefer honey because I just like it. It's a natural product and it's going to attract the insects a little bit better, the ants specifically. So I'm going to go with honey, and the second ingredient is borax. Now you ask, what is borax? Borax is a naturally occurring mineral. It's a naturally occurring mineral composed of sodium, boron, and oxygen and water. So this is basically used in mostly as a cleaning product. Now you can see it's an all-purpose laundry product, but it also can be used in cosmetics. And it's one of the safest natural insecticides, what we're using it for, that you could probably find. It's a lot safer than the industrial insecticides, that's for sure. Now, the great thing about borax is when the worker ants come across this, they won't eat it immediately. They'll take it back to the colony and feed it to the rest of the colony. And then the ants ultimately feed it to the queen and the entire colony dies off. So that's how borax works. It works through their digestive system, and it works through the worker ants who take the entire lot back to the colony and destroy the colony from within. So although I've never used borax in my laundry in any time in my life, it is a very common thing for a lot of people to use it in their laundry. So you can find it in the laundry aisle. It's at most grocery stores, most places like Walmart, larger grocery stores are going to have it. And it's kind of an old-fashioned way of cleaning your clothes, but it's still around after all these years. Now the other ingredients you're going to need, you're going to have to choose either sugar or honey. Like I said previously, I'm going to go with honey, and that's an easy thing to find. It's almost in 99.99% of grocery stores. So those are the two main ingredients, and we'll put it together. Now, even though handling of borax on your hands is perfectly safe, ingestion is not. So you want to make sure that you keep this away from your pets and children, because if it is consumed internally, then you have a much bigger problem, and it is toxic. So the recipe is quite simple. It's going to be 3 parts honey to 1 part borax, and we're going to mix that up right now. And just put our honey in here. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it there. And put a small amount of borax. And let's see, we're going to need a little bit more honey. I think we added too much borax. Now, once you get it mixed, you're going to turn it into a very smooth paste. So you're just going to keep mixing until you have a paste. And so that's going to be perfect. I'm going to use this in more than one trap, so I have more than I need. And that's how you do it. You just take that simple mixture and we'll set the traps up. Okay, so after some extended mixing, I think I've got it to a better paste. It's almost not quite as thick as peanut butter, but it's pretty close. So it's just very thick, but it's runny at the same time. So If you decide to go with granulated sugar, you're going to need to add just a little bit of water to it, and you still want that paste-like consistency in the mixture. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to fill one of our small caps with our paste mixture. I'm going to use this as a little scoop. We're just going to put it in the cap that we're going to place inside our plastic container, and we're going to fill about half of it up. You don't need it overflowing, just about half. And so that is going to go now into our plastic container. Now you want to remember your holes are going to be at the top when it's laying on the ground, because as rain comes in, you don't want any water coming into this bottom part. So just remember that. We're going to place our container inside, push it all the way to the back, and then reseal it. And hopefully we can kind of maneuver that around until the holes are at the right part. The ants will absolutely find this. Ants can find sugar a mile away, or honey in this case. But that is how we're going to set it up in the garden, and we'll go over a few more things about the trap. Now, one thing I will say, if you're using some type of, like this was an ice cream container, if you're using something that had a sugar-based product or there's food in it, you want to make sure you thoroughly clean it out. This has actually made a trip to the dishwasher, so that way the ants won't come in and ignore your bait and eat whatever food particles. So it needs to be a clean container. That's number one rule. You want them to go to the bait first and take that back to the colony. So I just want to make that point again, that these holes are small enough for ants, or they're large enough for ants, but too small for other insects that might try to find their way into it, like roaches. I'd said that before. And also pets. If you have any rodents like ground squirrels or anything like that, that will keep them from getting into it as well. If you're using this trap indoors, you want to make sure you keep it out of the reach of children, because they might be able to get the lid off. Pets, also, if you have a dog that likes to chew on things, you don't want him to consume any of the borax, because it could be very bad and you might make an unexpected trip to the vet. So we're going to place this in the garden where ants often frequent. Wherever you're seeing them in the garden, if you see an ant mound forming or you see ants on your plants, put it at the base of the plant. Now, one thing that's very important, this is going to heat up in sunlight, so you want it kind of in a shaded area under a plant. You don't want to put it out in the open. If you can't find a shaded area, you can cover it up with some leaves, but leave the front exposed, because if it gets too hot, that may prevent the ants from going inside the trap. It may be just too hot for them. So initially, when you place this in the garden, you may see an actual increase in ant activity, and that's because it's acting as an attractant. So if you notice that, it's not creating a bigger ant problem, it's just attracting the ants that are already there to your trap. So don't be troubled if you see that. Also, if you're doing the same thing inside, if you have a problem in ants in your kitchen or somewhere in your house and you're seeing a lot of ants around it, all it's doing is attracting them to the bait, and it's going to take some time for them to go in there. So patience is key to allow them to find the bait and just work through the process of them consuming it and eventually taking it back to the queen and destroying the whole colony. The traps themselves are going to require some maintenance, because if you're using this outdoor, it's going to dry out quicker because of the temperatures. If you're using it indoor, maybe much less frequently, maybe once only every 1 or 2 weeks. Outdoors, you may want to check it every 3 to 5 days to make sure that it remains fresh. You may have to change out caps and put a new cap of bait inside of it. So just remember, outside, more maintenance is required, but it's going to eventually cut down on ants. It could take, depending on the colony size, it could take anywhere from days to weeks to get the entire colony killed off. Now, if you see worker ants and a line of ants come to and fro the trap, remember, you don't want to bother the trap. You want to allow this process to take place. The worker ants are doing the work for you. The colony could be quite a distance away from the plants that you're trying to protect. So just remember, it takes time. Those worker ants are going to do all the work, and they'll eliminate the colony for you. Now, about disposing what's left of your mixture, if you're going to reuse it and continue to use it, you want to make sure you put this in a labeled container and make sure it's out of reach of children. That's something that's really important, because it will cause issues, as it's a toxic substance internally. Not just by touching it, but if you consume it and a small child consumes it, that's where you can have a problem. Or if a pet gets to it, that sweetness is going to disguise the taste of the borax, and so that makes it a much more toxic product. So just remember, you want to put this somewhere that you can't get to it, or just rinse it out and reuse it, remix it, and you can redo the trap at a later time if you continue to see ants. So guys, let's go set the trap up near the plants that are being attacked by ants and get rid of our unwelcome or uninvited guests. So guys, here's one of the areas we've been seeing problems is on these pepper plants. We've seen a lot of ants around this area. So I'm just going to carefully place it in kind of a shaded spot under the plant. Remember, the holes need to be towards the top. We're going to set it right there. And believe it or not, the ants will start finding this in no time at all. So I just want to finally say, I hope if you found something that's helpful or useful, or you want to see more videos about gardening, you'll click like and subscribe. I really appreciate that. Every viewer is important to me, and every comment's important to me because I do go through and read them. And I like critical comments just as much as the flattering comments. The critical ones help me think and maybe teach me something along the way. I don't think there's any such thing as a master gardener. I think there's some people that have high levels of gardening knowledge, but gardening is something that you're always going to be learning about. And so I consistently say that I'm always learning. I've been gardening on this piece of property for 25 years, and there's always something new to learn. So anyways, guys, hope you have a great day. All this discussion about ants, I think I'm going to buy an ant farm on Amazon. Link in the description.